Great, so welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. We are presenting New Borders Business Intelligence for Trade Enforcement webinar focused on using advanced analytics to stem illegal wildlife trade. We're hosting today's webinar in partnership with the Painted Dog Conservation and Zambesia Conservation Alliance. And my name is Preeti Patel and I'm the Director of Business Development at New Borders, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Thank you so much in advance for your time. So before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping notes. If you have any questions for the presenters, please feel free to use the chat feature in the Zoom webinar at the bottom of your screen. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email us directly at bite@newborders.com. Today's session is being recorded and it will be disseminated after the webinar. So next, I would like to go ahead and share what is on our agenda for today. So we'll first start by introducing our webinar presenters. We'll then provide an overview of how big data analytics is being used to identify illegal wildlife trade within the supply chain. And then we will demonstrate a set of use cases on the actual BITE platform. We'll then hear from our partners, the Painted Dog Conservation and Zambesia Conservation Alliance, and we will end with a question and answer portion. So I would like to now introduce our webinar presenters. From the BITE team, we have Michael Ronayne, New Borders Customs and Trade Enforcement subject matter expert. Mike has over 20 years of experience investigating transnational criminal organizations, and most recently was a special agent under Homeland Security investigations. We have our data scientist, Catherine Williams, who has experience as a geographic information systems analyst and systems engineer for the US federal and national security agencies. From the Painted Dog Conservation, we have Peter Blinston, Executive Director, and Sishele Nolovu, GIS Technician. From Zambesia Conservation Alliance, we have Robin Brown, Co-Founder, and Nick Holm, Head of Operations. So with that, I would like to now turn it over to Mike Ronayne.
Thanks, Preeti. Appreciate it. And as we see an increase in global trade, there are significantly more international transactions taking place across the world. While this is great for economic growth, it allows a greater opportunity for unlawful trade, which can now be more easily masked by the sheer volume of transactions. As we will demonstrate momentarily with New Borders BITE platform, compliance and enforcement teams are able to very quickly and efficiently identify suspicious transactions through data analytics applied to complex data sets, such as transactional manifest data. The BITE platform, which can ingest and analyze massive complex data sets, can also quickly segregate high-risk shipments, target entities of interest, and pinpoint sources of illicit activity, all of which allows us to more easily identify trafficking networks and acquire visibility into what's occurring in a particular trade space. In terms of illegal wildlife trade specifically, big data analytics and real-time analysis are critical for conservation groups focused on protection of species and their habitats. Through analysis and visualization of large data sets in rapid time, the BITE platform allows operators to identify poaching and illegal wildlife trade activity, offering opportunities for interdiction and even potentially insertion points for covert investigations. So as you see here on the slide, the Business Intelligence for Trade Enforcement platform, or BITE, allows users to seamlessly ingest large amounts of disparate and disconnected data and make sense of it using our powerful analytical engine. The BITE platform contains open source manifest trade data sets and screening lists, advanced analytical visualization tools, search functions, and case workflow management with the ability to ingest and again, analyze large operational data sets. So as we look at our map here, BITE currently has over 500 million records to include trade manifest data for about 20 countries to include Russia, India, Pakistan, Vietnam, and China. We purchase data that is commercially available from suppliers that have relationships with the respective countries, which provides us with the ability to analyze global cargo shipments and focus on significant investigative data points. Also within the BITE platform, we have enriched data sets. Among the enriched data sets included in BITE are screening lists for denied parties from the US and the European Union, and filters for things like HS codes, which we'll be referring to in our demonstrations. And HS codes, if you're unfamiliar, are 6-digit numbers and a standard way of classifying trade products used by customs agencies throughout the world for assessing duties, taxes, and gathering statistics. So now Catherine will show you the tool where the data is housed and how our data scientists use it to visualize information and to tell the story. Catherine?
Hi, everyone. So, first, I want to give you an overview of the Byte platform, and it's based on Kibana. And so, this is one of the many tools that we use, and it's based on the Elastic Stack. So, one of the things about Kibana, you can ingest massive amounts of data, and you can have structured, unstructured text, numerical data, time series data, and even geospatial data. So, you'll be able to quickly search and use the drag and drop interface to rapidly create tables and charts. So, three of the tools that I'll be showing you is the Discover, the visualization tool, and the dashboard tool. So here on the Discover page, and you'll see the Vietnam data set, which we'll be going through later on, you can see here that there's over 50 data elements that you can pick and choose and filter out. And from there, once you see what's in the data, you will go to the visualization tab and create a visualization. And so from here, you can see that there's a heat map. And so you can shade a chart by color to see what's hot. And it'll go, you can either choose hot or cool. You even have a map, which you can plot your coordinates and show your data geographically. And you can have time series data as well. So with this visualization tool, it creates panels. And so you create these panels and then it'll be able to create a story. And you create your story in the dashboard tab. So here is a dashboard that we've created. And you can see that there's panels, and we'll talk about this later on, but you can see the panels from the visualization tool connected, and you'll be able to compare and contrast. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Catherine. So we're going to show you two case studies today. And as you'll see in our case studies, there's significant investigative information that can be extracted and analyzed by Byte. As a special agent with the US government for more than 20 years, I know the ability to quickly sort data, trade data, or any data for that matter, can be critical in identifying timelines, associates, and patterns of behavior. So Catherine is going to show you two use cases. The first one will involve shipments of shark fins, which started from the utilization of a list of 86 HS codes we just referred to, published by US Customs and Border Protection, related specifically to shipments of regulated wildlife commodities. Using open source research, we identified articles related to an illegal export of shark fins from Ecuador to Hong Kong. The fins in these shipments were reportedly from sharks which are protected on the IUCN Red List. The shipment, which was discovered by customs authorities in Hong Kong, was 26 tons of fins, which was said to equate to over 38,000 skinned sharks. Identified in the articles were both an exporter and a company, Fish Choas, that sought a permit for the illegal shipment after it was even actually seized. Now that we have identified the company, we have the ability to go in and search in our data for records that show the process of gathering additional information. Now, we cannot go into everything here, but Catherine will show you how to open up your investigations, and any agent or analyst can take it from there and conduct some post-seizure analysis.
All right. So the first page I'll be showing you is the manifest data. So after we've ingested the data, you'll come here and change your index pattern. And then you can see that there's almost 9 million records in the Ecuador manifest data set. So you would scroll down and filter out and look to see what's in your data set. And then after applying the 86 HTS codes that we've mentioned, we now have about 282 records. So from here, we wanted to look in the product description and we wanted to see and try to find shark fin related products. So we searched shark fin in Spanish and in English, and we found cartilage supplements and shark fins. So from there, we gathered those HTS codes that directly related to shark fins, and we now have 48 records. So how did we display this? We created visualizations and we created a story using dashboard. So here's our dashboard. So you can see there's different ways to showcase your HS codes in pie charts and in block letters. And we also have a word cloud. And the word cloud shows all of the words and descriptions that helped us find these shark fin related items.
Okay, so as Catherine's showing the bite capability, I'd just like to point out that as we look at a particular entity, and in this case, fish choas, we have the ability to identify many data points which could ultimately become critical in your investigations and future enforcement actions. While this is an ongoing matter, we're able to show you that this particular company is active and has additional shipments of shark fins. So as you will see, we're uncovering potentially valuable investigative data within our cargo manifest, and this can be very useful as we identify and track repeat offenders.
So here we have a graph from January to December 2020, and it shows all the shipments over that time period. So as you can see, Fish Choas has the most amount of shipments in this time frame, and you can see in the blue. As you can see, there's a big gap, and this could be because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and maybe they stopped production. We're not sure, but as a next step, if anyone was interested to see why items stop, that would be something to look at moving forward. So as you can see, there's ways to visualize the data, and here you have Fish Choas again as the top shipper in a bar graph. But what about the top consignee? And the top consignee is the company that received these shipments. So companies in Ecuador exported, and these are the companies, the top companies that imported these items into their country. So Grande Robles is the top consignee, so the top importer from these exports. So down here, we also have HS code overweight. So this is the HS code for shark fins. We have shark supplements and shark cartilage. So for shark fins, we can see the Fish Choas exported the most shark fins, and they're at 48,000 kilograms. So we also have top shipper overweight, and this is all of the HS codes combined, but top shipper overweight. And we also have consignee overweight, and that is another depiction of the graph shown up here. And then we also have, if you're interested in a particular record, and we're interested in Fish Choas, this box is to show everything related to Fish Choas, as well as the documents and the records that includes it. So you would scroll down and look for more information.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. So in the second case study, Catherine will discuss coral shipments to and from Vietnam. Although we're looking at a completely different commodity, we're applying similar methodology and analytics, so you can see that bite can seamlessly and quickly shift to different data. In this case, we're going to look for illegal shipments of coral that are both imported and exported from Vietnam. We know that many coral species are on the CITES list, so our next step would be to review the data to see if we can identify any of these listed species. We thought that this case was interesting because we know there's a growing demand for coral in the aquarium trade. We saw a significant amount of shipments, and many species of coral are protected under international, domestic, or even state laws. Where removing coral from its natural environment has an adverse effect by eliminating protection and food sources for wildlife, introducing an invasive species of coral into a new environment can decimate biodiversity. So now, Catherine, back to you for the second case study.
All right, so what I'll be showing you next is the Vietnam export data. So we have Vietnam export imports, and I'll be showing you the exports. So we're going to apply the same process that we did before. And as you can see in the exports, there are 39 million records. So applying the same process, scrolling through, looking at the data, applying the 86 H2S codes, we now have 22,000 records. So after finding the coral and aquarium HTS codes, and there are about 3, we now have 10,000 records. As you can see, these HTS codes are pretty similar in numerical sequence, and that's because they're under the appendix and they're related into coral and aquarium. So from here, the 10,000 records, we want to display this data. And so after visualizing and creating a dashboard, we now have this dashboard. And so again, this is a period from January to December 2020, and many shipments over time. And you can see that HopTac is the leading company that is exporting coral and aquarium data. So here we have the word block. So another way to visualize the data. And we also have a word cloud with soft corals, aquarium, soft coral. So this is what we looked in the product description and how we came up with the HTS codes. So what about export and discharge data? So once all the product is gathered and it's exported, where is it going? So we see that LA has it receives a port, and so they receive the most from Vietnam. We also have Chicago, Frankfurt, Tokyo, and so these are the top 30. We have about over 80 discharge locations. So this is another way to show the HS codes in a pie chart. And we also have the exports. So where is the product leaving from? And Ho Chi Minh is the top loading port. You can see over 99% of the product is leaving from Ho Chi Minh. So when I talked about the geospatial data, this is a map of the countries that's receiving these exports. So we also have total gross, the exports, and it's stating over the total gross weight. So we also see Hoptalk is shipping the most amount of product, coral and aquarium products. And we also have the top consignee, which is APET. So also we have the top shipper and other graphs that depict what we previously shown. Moving on to the Vietnam import data, we saw the exports, and so now we have the imports. It is 45 million records. So applying the same process that we've done previously, we've added the 86 HTS codes. So we now have 3,900 records. And so looking for the coral data and applying those direct HTS codes, we now have 100 records. Displaying this data in the dashboard, telling our story, we have the HS codes in block form. We also have a graph depicting over time which companies receive this data. So again, the consignee, so this is the Vietnam, it's importing these shipments, and Thien Duc is the company in Vietnam that's receiving most of the product, most of these shipments. So where is the loading port before the companies receive this? So we're getting imports, and Vietnam is getting imports from Jakarta, Bangkok, and Taipei. So we also see there's other ways to visualize the data. We have the HS codes shown in a pie chart. We have the import consignee overweight, and you can see Thien Duc is the top leader. And we also have that in a pie chart as well. And then we have the top shipper. So CV Tropus Fish is the top shipper that's exporting the product and importing them into Vietnam. And this is another graph depicting that as well. So how does this relate? And what can you do with this? As you can see, crushed coral, which is Sclerotina, also known as stony coral, this is a record that we've identified that is listed in the CITES Parties Appendix 2 as a protected coral species. This is a transaction that could be given to analysts to look at in greater detail to determine if this was a legal transaction or not. So that concludes our demo. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Back to you, Preeti.
Thank you so much, Catherine and Mike. So as you can see, our team of data scientists and subject matter experts do have the ability to perform deep dives on import and export records to pull information relevant to the illegal trafficking of wildlife products. BITE is an investigative tool for anti-poaching units and law enforcement agencies to help them identify potential poaching occurrences or the smuggling of illegal wildlife commodities. So with that, I would actually like to now turn it over to the Painted Dog Conservation. Peter and Cichele. So their mission is really focused on protecting the habitat and population of the African painted dog. So they will demonstrate how they are utilizing BITE to upload data and visualize the patrol efforts of the anti-poaching unit in order to improve strategic operations within Zimbabwe. So Peter and Cichele, over to you.
Thanks, Preeti. Yeah, so we've been running these multiple operations for 25 years or so now. And where there's a significant overlap for us is with our anti-poaching operations and where we find painted dogs, whether it's through direct observation from our field teams or through GPS collar downloads. One of the, back to the APU, anti-poaching units, one of the biggest challenges is measuring the effectiveness of your anti-poaching units. And we at PDC, we spend a significant six-figure amount of US dollars per year on anti-poaching operations. And the challenge is you can get the same results from being really effective to being totally ineffective. So i.e., you can get 0 snares collected, no poaching activity recorded on any given location, because your anti-poaching unit are really effective in protecting that area. But you can also get those same 0 returns with them being ineffective and just sat parked under a tree. So we use smart data to like the patrol data, but which provides a lot of information. But to be able to really scrutinize that data, to be able to really understand what's going on, overlay that with where are we seeing dogs, are our anti-poaching unit being as effective as they can be in protecting the dogs. So I'll hand over to Sicheli now, and she will show you how we have been using BITE and in conjunction with that data, that raw data from SMART, to improve the effectiveness of our anti-poaching units. Chelly?
Thank you, Peter. I'll just share my screen right now. Okay. The SMART tool to collect their data. So from the data that we got, I managed to put it onto BITE dashboard, and this is what we got on the snares that have been collected over the past years. As you can see, from 2012, with about 798 snares collected, and the number of snares that are collected keep increasing here and there, and they decline in some areas. Then in 2020, we had a spike of wire snares. As you can see, it's just at the top there. This was mostly maybe due to COVID, where people were not, were home, were not working. And the other issue could be our anti-poaching was very effective during that particular time. They were working extra hard, and they managed to recover all these snares. Okay. Then we have also managed to actually check the effectiveness of the area, like that they would have patrolled, if the anti-poaching, if the area that they patrol affects the number of snares that they collect, if it has any impact on the number of snares that they collect. So as you can see, this graph here, I overlaid it with these lines here. So I've got this bar chart showing the snares that were collected. Then we've got this line in green here. It shows the area that the anti-poaching team would have covered in that particular year, and that's in square kilometers. And then we have this one in red, the red line. It shows the number of anti-poaching unity members. So we wanted to see if the increase of our anti-poaching unit members has any impact on the number of snares they collect, and also on the area that they cover. Then we realized that when we started our anti-poaching unity, there were a team of 15 members, and this is the area that they used to cover. That's about 351 square kilometers, and they could maybe get, they managed to like retrieve 798 snares. Then as the time went on, we managed to increase the number of the anti-poaching unity by including volunteers from the local community. Like here in 2016, we had about, that's 2015, we had about 65 anti-poaching members that include the volunteers from the local communities, and they managed to cover 853 square kilometers, and they recovered 1,566 snares. And then I'll look at maybe this one in 2020. The 2020, they actually covered a smaller area. They compared to 2021. 2020, they covered like 1,410 square kilometers, but they managed to recover 5,666 snares. And at that time, we had 135 members patrolling. So this might show that the effectiveness of having more anti-poaching unity members patrolling, it will also improve, like they will cover, even if they cover a small area, but they can do it thoroughly and get more snares. They can recover more snares from the ground, which is quite a good thing. Okay, then I'll move on to the third graph that we created here. So we want to further break down, like to analyze which months do they recover most snares. Then we have like this graph here. It shows like these spikes here were all in summer. That's there's a dry season in Hwange National Park. So that's like August here. They managed to recover like 706 snares, and then we had this one in 2020, that's October, they managed to recover 1,246 snares in that month. So we can see that during dry season, they tend to recover more wire snares. And we then thought maybe it mostly due to during that particular time of the season, the vegetation is actually low, so it's easier for the anti-poaching unit team to patrol, to maneuver around collecting these snares. It's much clearer. And actually at that same time, that's when most people from the local community, who are the ones who normally put up these wire snares, that's when they have like their free time, because they would have done with their field work. Most of them, they are relaxing at that time, so they have enough time to actually go and put up these snares trying to catch bushmeat. Okay, so and then we also put up this map here just to show where these snares have been collected, the areas that we have collected the snares. And then I also overlaid it with the dogs positions where we have seen the dogs. Maybe our researchers have seen the dogs, or where we had GPS collars around this area. And then so the dogs are the ones that are shown in this brown color, and then the red marks, they show the snares, that the position where the snares have been collected. And then the blue dots here shows the water points that the poachers, the water points that the anti-poaching unit team would have captured on their smart devices. So as you can see, the same areas where our dogs move around, where they habitat, is the same areas where these poachers tend to put up the wire snares. So normally the dogs will move away from the park. As you can see, this is just Skumi Forest. It's just a forest which is adjacent to Hwange National Park. So the dogs will tend to move outside outside the park, mostly due to pressures from other predators like lions and hyenas. So with that competition, they have to move outside the park to these areas, the forest area where we have also hunting farms. And here they come and meet up with these wire snares that are all over. So it becomes really a challenge to the survival of a painted dog in such an environment. So you can see that where we have the wire snares, it's the areas where we have water points. Like here, you can see they were following a river. That's where they'll put up the wire snares. And it happens that the dogs will also move close to these areas because they are hunting in those water holes. That's where they drink and everything. So it becomes a challenge save painted dogs. That's why our anti-poaching will have to move more on these areas and try to keep them safe for the dogs to survive. Okay, and then we have this chart here, which shows the poachers that have been arrested, like the age group of the poachers that we have arrested so far. So the youngest that the anti-poaching team has arrested is a 16-year-old, and the oldest was an 82-year-old. Then most of those poachers are males, and then there are very few females, which are shown in this orange color. So the males are in this blue color. Okay, so we then, after putting up this graph, we have now realized that, okay, there is a certain age group which put up the snares, which are the one more into poaching. So as painted dog conservation, now we have to target these age groups, certain age groups, in order to try and keep them occupied so that they do not put up the snares. Like already we have a bush camp which targets the children which are like in grade 6, which are like 12-year-olds below. So we believe these are the future generation that's coming up. Then those ones, we are hoping they will not poach as much as this age group, which is around maybe 25 to about 40 there, because they never attended the bush camp, so they don't really understand the importance of conservation. So we'll now have to maybe come up with some strategies that we can put up to the community in order to reduce the number of poachers again. Okay, then we have this chart here, which shows the poachers, why these poachers have been arrested. Like we have 40% of these poachers are arrested because they will be hunting bushmeat, and then we have 27% which get arrested for non-wildlife crime. And from my understanding, these are poachers would have been arrested after a tip-off to the anti-poaching unity team, and then they might be found maybe in possession of something else which is not related to wildlife crime, but the tip-off would have been given to the anti-poaching unity team. And then we have 26% which poach the wood. They harvest the wood for firewood and making sculptures. And then we have about 4% who are arrested for fishing around the Wanga National Park. So yeah, so far that's what we have managed to do with BITE, and we are still learning and hoping to analyze more and get to understand our data. Hopefully we'll get more from BITE. Thank you. Over to Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chelly. So a lot of this information we know intuitively, if you like, and from experience, but to be able to have it presented graphically like this is really valuable to us in determining where we deploy our scouts, when we deploy them, when we need to increase the numbers. I mean, that was really significant the last couple of years, where we saw an increase in poaching activities, and we engaged more of the local communities, and that just increased our footprint on the ground. It didn't increase the area that we were covering necessarily, as you could see from the data, but it increased our presence on the ground, and we recovered a lot more snares due to that. And carrying that forward last year, because we had that information, so carrying it the same policy forward into 2021, that's where we had that same presence on the ground, but now we've had much less poaching activity and a lot fewer snares collected as a result. And that's the sort of information that we need. We need to know where and when to direct our resources to be most effective, and BITE is really giving us that information. Priti, I think, are we done for now?
Yeah, I think, yeah, if that's it, then we'll now turn it over to Zambesia Conservation. So yeah, thank you so much, Peter and Seychelle. And we're happy to hear that you all are utilizing Bite on the ground. So now I'd like to turn it over to Robin and Nick from Zambesia Conservation Alliance, whose outreach spans over 7 countries along the Zambezi River and Southern Africa, and whose mission is to support conservation efforts for their partners. Their incredible work includes collaborative efforts with the United for Wildlife and its financial and transport task force initiatives. So Robin and Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Priti. Yeah, I'm just blown away by the amount of work that's going on behind the scenes. Just the brain power that's gone into some of that data analysis and so on. But here's a little opportunity to change context a little bit. Could we have the next slide there, Priti? Okay, so the Zambesia region. The Zambesia region is a sort of pre-colonial term. It refers to the catchment area of the Zambezi River. The Zambezi River, it finds its headwaters in northwestern Zambia, and then travels south, or travels west a little way into Angola, and then south through Zambia, and joins Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, with Zambia at a point called Kazungula. It's actually a point where 4 countries meet at a single point. I believe it's the only place in the world where 4 countries meet. The river then turns east and starts heading, meandering its way towards the Victoria Falls, throws itself over the Victoria Falls, through Lake Kariba, down into the middle or lower Zambezi Valley, into Lake Coborabassa, and then onwards through Mozambique to the Indian Ocean. Why is this story crucial to all of this data? Well, this river, 2,700 kilometers long, is arguably the most important river in Africa when it comes to biodiversity. In this catchment area, which spans these 7 countries, we find the home of the largest herd of elephant, the largest population of elephant left on the planet. We find 10% of the world's remaining land carnivores. We find 7 diverse biospheres, which are home to some extremely unique habitats. And we find incredible national parks. And in all of this, of course, there's a tourist value, but there's no doubt that the intrinsic value of this region in Africa is more than just a spectacle for us humans. It's really the balance. It's a lovely gauge for the future of where we're going. And the protection of this very often comes down, obviously, to the national parks themselves, but more so, we believe, to the organizations such as Painted Dog Conservation that we've just been seeing there, who work on the periphery of these big parks. These large green areas you can see on this map, these are the large parks: Wangi, Kafui, Luangwa, Etosha. Wonderful parks, but on the boundary of these parks, you find communities that have been living with this wildlife for years, literally thousands of years. And it's in these areas that we need to work with outreach partners to protect the biodiversity. Let me not dally too long. Let's go to the next page there, please, Priti. So our outreach partners that are working in these areas obviously are dealing with constant threats, not just from poaching, but obviously from biodiversity loss through wood cutting and monoculture. In fact, biodiversity loss, without a doubt, is the single most important factor. And if we can't bring value to the communities that live in these peripheral areas, we literally could be, over the next 20 to 30 years, presiding over the end of what we have in this region. When I started out as a guide at the age of 18, I was a river guide. I used to paddle on the Zambezi River, and I then became a raft guide in Victoria Falls and canoed the upper Zambezi River. So I've been very fortunate to paddle large sections of this river and to enjoy the biodiversity. But just when I think back to the early days when I paddled this river and I could dip my cup into the river and drink that water without it needing to be purified, it made me realize how important this asset is. And that's why it's so important that we gather these outreach partners together and provide them the support they need, not just financially, but strategic alliances like the one we're talking about today. To talk more about what we're doing with those outreach partners, I'm going to hand over to Nick Home, who leads our operations and our IWT.
Great, thanks very much, Robin. Pretty, can you go down to the next slide, please? We won't dwell very long on this, but as you can see from there, poachers don't restrict themselves to borders, and they're becoming more and more sophisticated in the way that they are attacking the animals. Sophisticated in terms of their equipment, sophisticated in terms of the weaponry they use. There have been cases of poachers using drones with thermal cameras on them, looking for rhino, elephant in the national parks or in game management areas. And that sophistication is making it harder and harder for the anti-poaching units. So that map really just shows the sort of scale of what the poachers are capable of, and the fact that they don't respect any borders. If you just go down to the next one, Pretty, that'd be kind. And also, I think you can see from that picture, I mean, I don't really need to say anything about that, really. It's you can see that something like 36,000 individual pangolins can fit into one 40-foot container. And if you imagine those 40-foot containers on all of those ships going around the world, trying to track them and find them is very difficult. So, Pretty, next slide, please. So really, the Zambesia Conservation Alliance is exactly what it says on the tin. It's an alliance. We have a number of outreach partners who are all the smaller, generally the smaller conservation organizations in those 7 countries of the Zambesia region, all of whom are doing fantastic work, and most of whom have their own anti-poaching units, and most of whom are always on the lookout for different ways of being able to make themselves more efficient, but not always having the ability to do so. The key word, as I've said, is alliance. We also have a number of strategic partnerships with organizations like, I think Robin alluded to, the Royal Foundation and United for Wildlife. We are working very closely with a law firm in Zimbabwe. We work with an investigative firm based in the United States. And, you know, one of the best things we've done is actually partner up with New Borders, because for all the methods that are being used to trap poachers and get them into court and get them convicted, they are becoming more sophisticated, and we really actually need to use whatever we've got. And these tools that the Bite platform provide is giving us a way of getting ahead, and giving our outreach partners a way of getting ahead in the game. Because if we can't use every tool at our disposal, including this analytic data, then you know, we're possibly fighting a losing war, and we can't afford that. I think, you know, really, I think I want to stop there, because effectively that's what we are. We're an alliance organization, and we're trying to encourage as many people as we can. There's one other thing that slipped my mind. That's why I paused there. Is that, to give you an example of something we are working on with New Borders, is following the money of criminals. So these criminals all have to, you know, pay each other and pay the poachers and pay for the ivory and the rhino horns that they're then exporting to different countries. And following that money involves the cooperation of banks and other law enforcement agencies. And so we're gathering together as much information as we can in the different countries that we work in to provide new borders with some of this information to enable them to then be able to populate a website that we're working on, or that a strategic partner's working on, that will then allow these banks to keep an eye on the various people that may or may not be of interest, and that needs to spread out regionally. So, I think I'll stop there. It's probably going to be easier if people ask questions if they've got any. So, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Robin and Nick. You know, we are very proud to have partners such as yourself in the painted dog conservation. You know, you guys are really pushing forth the incredible, important work that your organizations are doing and employing on the ground solutions. So with that, I would like to now open the floor up for any questions. Please feel free to use the chat feature on the bottom of your screen. And yeah, we'll just stick around for, you know, a few minutes just to answer any questions. Seems like folks are being a little shy. So, you know, if we don't actually have any questions, I'm just kind of wondering if, you know, either PDC or ZCA, if you want to just provide any additional like last minute updates on any of the work that you all are doing. I'm sure some of our folks would love to hear that.
Yeah, sure, Pretty. I mean, because of this, even at this level, yeah, early days, I mean, in terms of our use of BITE and the analysis that it's providing for us, it shows very clearly the need to increase the boots on the ground, the presence on the ground, and how much more effective your operations can be. And that for us feeds in, that will direct our fundraising objectives, in terms of now, you know, we need to engage these volunteers, well, now they're community anti-poaching, because when we get the funding, we can engage them, you know, with a daily stipend and that kind of thing. And that directs our fundraising efforts and talking to our different supporters and being able to illustrate very graphically the impact and the effect of those dollars spent. So yeah, it's really a valuable tool for us, and it will go a long way to increasing our effectiveness.
I'd just like to come in there, Peter, and it's relative to what you mentioned. One of the areas that we're working on with BITE and with focused conservation is taking this information sharing across boundaries, not necessarily at this stage across international boundaries, because that comes with its own issues, but the sharing of information into a single point across ownership boundaries, and then taking this more broad sector data to paint a broader picture offers a much clearer analysis, ability to analyze the trends. And like you showed, like yourself and Chele showed, you know, through 8 years of data, once the years passed, that data is still so valuable. In fact, 5 years later, it actually becomes more valuable because you've got 5 years of data to predict what's going to happen next.